Virgin. Bitch. Podcast. Inspiring women to overcome social stereotypes and share unique life experiences without fear of being defiantly different. Your hosts, Christopher and Heather. Let's talk, shall we?
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. That quote from former world heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson. Still, some people put themselves at risk of being punched in the face, and that is how they find their true self and their true strength. And that was the path of our guest, former professional boxer and kickboxer turned mentor and teacher, Lisa Vanahn. Welcome, Lisa, to Virgin Beauty Bitch.
Hi.
Pleasure to have you. So excited to have you. Now, Lisa, you are the creator of the I Am Initiative, a self-defense through self-empowerment curriculum for pre- and mid-teen girls, and also the author of I Am, A Girl's Guide to Harnessing Superpowers. But is it fair to say that for any of this to exist, you had to personally experience being punched in the face, literally as a pugilist athlete, and then figuratively as a young girl who was, is it fair to say, exploited?
Mm-hmm. It is fair to say. Yeah. I have my origin story is dynamic and not unlike many women who have gone through abuse and abusive relationships and the experiences where their femininity is exploited. And that's just the right word. Exploited is the right word. I personally got pushed out of a Bronco. I was in an abusive relationship and I got pushed out of a Bronco and I landed on the curb of a street and sat there for a few minutes before I turned, and there on the corner was a kickboxing studio. And instead of crying until things settled and maybe I got picked back up, I didn't know what was going to happen, I went in and I took a class. And that was the beginning of my new life.
So before then, you had no interest, no inkling towards that field at all.
No, I was curious, which is likely why he pushed me out at that location. I had talked about, like, I drove by this place and I talked about, oh, it might be fun to try a class or it might be fun to go in and do something. So I had thought about it, but I hadn't explored that. And then on this particular day, there was a series of things that happened where he just flipped out and he grabbed me and he pulled me into the car. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where we were going. And then right as we were kind of pulling up that street, he opened the door and pushed me out and then drove off. And as he did say, he said, you can go in and take a class or you can sit on the curb. I don't care what you do. So I went in and I took a class. I cried through the entire class. I was a hot mess. I was just crying and punching and crying and kicking. And what's beautiful is the studio was owned by two sisters who really witnessed that I was in it. And they didn't know why or what, and they didn't need to know. They just witnessed me in it. And they said, please come back. We think that this would be a great place for you to be. And fast forward to 2 years later, I was teaching full time at that studio and working on extricating myself. It took me 3.5 years after that day to actually fully extricate myself from this abusive relationship. I needed to get a restraining order. There were a lot of things that needed to happen. But the reason I survived that relationship was because I was parallel working my life. I was going to the studio and taking these classes and getting stronger, and then going back into this abusive relationship. I was kind of living these two lives, but I needed the kickboxing. I needed this new community to help me build this strength, because at 19 years old, I had experienced just abuse after abuse after abuse. There was really, like, I was just a shell of nothing. And that needed to be built up in order for me to bravely leave the abuse behind. for good. And I will say for good. That was when I removed myself from that relationship, I've in the remaining years, I've been in a number of different relationships, but I can gladly say that while they haven't all ended in togetherness, they have all ended well. I've met many lovely people along my path, and I've had beautiful relationships that for whatever reason have not continued, but they've all ended well.
When you talk about how finding that new community helped build you back up, what do you think were like the core elements of what you were like learning there? Like, is it the techniques? You're building up a new skill set. There's people around you. You're growing as a human being. Like, what were the steps that kind of got you to the point where you're feeling, I guess, less of a shell again?
Yeah. Well, so what I would say is when you have experienced gargantuan levels of trauma in your life, going inward is freaky as shit. Right? Like you don't, like I don't want to touch what's in there. I want to run away from what's in there, which is why so many people that are in that have experienced trauma like end up in addiction or end up in outward external experiences where you can see that they're trying to escape, and then what they're really running away from is what's inside.
Like
So
if you touch anything inside, the whole thing might fall apart.
yes,
Hold on.
yes,
Hold on.
yes,
I feel
yeah. And
you.
so what happens is we're we are we are not just physical beings, we are spiritual beings, we are energy beings as well. So everything first occurs in the mental realm and then the astral realm, and it moves through frequency and vibration down to the physical realm. And that's where everything gets held, is in the body. Right. So we talk about, I don't know if you've ever heard of this beautiful book called The Body Keeps the Score. I highly recommend it. Which talks about Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine is another great book about how the body holds trauma. And for me, I couldn't, without shedding some of this in my trauma in my body, I couldn't actually go inside and do the internal work. I needed to get some of it out of my body first. And that's what happened, was like just going and learning, yes, learning the strength moves, learning to the jab, the cross, the kicks, punching, kicking, having the action on mostly a daily basis. I would go, and for 1 hour, I would take strong action. And then granted, the rest of my day could be hiding and cowering from this relationship. But I had this anchor to this kickboxing studio where I would go and practice strong action. And that what we love to talk about is consistency is key. So just that over a course of, it took me a couple years. So like, I love that because people are like, just get out of the abusive relationship. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna walk away from this person that has like basically has me wrapped in fear, believing that if I walk away, my family's gonna get killed. I'm gonna get killed. I don't, you know what I mean? Like the people that aren't in it don't understand. They're just like, why doesn't she just leave? I'm like, why don't you just shut up?
I love that.
Why don't you just not talk about what you don't have any experience with?
Yes.
But so like it's one of my favorite things to say is like, I didn't just go in and take a class and leave a relationship. I went in, I took a class, and then I kept going back. And it took me, like I said, a few years before I was able to actually work that relationship out and keep bringing in the new. And it was happening in the physical realm. So I was having conversations with powerful women. I was able to vent some of the stuff that was happening. I felt supported. I felt heard. I felt listened to in the confines of this studio. It was really this dojo was a safe haven for me. And I continued to expand that. And as I expanded it, I started to naturally move inward. So I started taking these strong action, and then I started to feel stronger. And then when I started to feel stronger, I started to think stronger. So what I like to teach with my young women is that the natural order is to move from the mental plane to the physical plane. So the natural order is first you have a thought, and then you have a feeling that attaches to that thought, and then you take action based off the thought and the feeling. So if things are in alignment, I have a thought, ooh, I have this beautiful thought of like, I'm strong, and then I feel strong, and then I take strong action. Well, when you're a person who has been beat down by the world over and over and over, your thoughts are not your own any longer, and your feelings are really held captive by this trauma that you're holding in the body. And so reverse engineering it, taking action, moving it through the body first, and then taking that moving through the body into the feeling and then back into the thought. So you're reverse engineering. That's what I did for myself, and that's what I learned for myself. It worked. And I was doing this. I've been doing this for decades. So I was doing this back before kickboxing for me was powerful. Now we look around and you look on Instagram and you have all of these somatic teachers and these people that are teaching ecstatic dance, and they're teaching get in the body, like get in the body to heal the trauma instead of getting out of the body. And it's powerful stuff. It's kind of, I love watching some of the healing work catch up with these things that I was kind of figuring out on my own back then, that, you know, there wasn't really the same access to stuff that there is now. It's exciting to me how much access there is to healing now.
I'm interested to, when did the body, the expressing out all of that anger and hurt, when did that become a profession for you? Like, why did that become a profession for you?
I think it was just like the only thing I'd ever done that I felt so good doing. It just felt natural to move into it. Like I was taking classes regularly, and it was, kickboxing was getting popular. Like people were, the classes kept getting full and full and full. And so it was kind of this natural progression of the sisters who own the studio saw how dedicated I was, that I loved it. I was there all the time. It was really my second home. And then as it got busier, they're like, we need help. Would you be interested in teaching? So when you say it, like, I believe in serendipity, I believe in synchronicity, I believe that this was my path. And so it opened effortlessly for me, right? There wasn't really even a decision other than it started with, would you like to teach a class? Oh, of course I would. What an honor. You know, they want me to teach a class. Wow. They think that highly of me and my skill set that I could teach. That's amazing, which also built me up into more confidence. And then that got added to another class, and then things kept getting busier. And so then lo and behold, I was teaching full time, and I was working there full time. And for me, after getting the skills, it was a natural progression into sparring, which is like practice fighting. And with sparring, I found I really loved the strategy of not just hitting pads, but like, how do I avoid punches coming at me and then throwing? Like, I really enjoyed it. And so then I was like, well, I want to try having a real fight. Like, I want to try that. And so I did. The first person I fought, her name was Lisa too, which was brilliant because I was in this Knights of Columbus hall. It was all smoky back then, and there's people in there, and there's beer getting slung around, and everybody's yelling, "Go Lisa, go Lisa," everyone. And it was so great. Everyone's cheering for me, which is not true. Like,
I love that.
It was the best scenario it could have been. And it was so close. It was back and forth. And she hit me so hard, harder than I'd ever been hit. And when it was over, I won just by I just snuck out a win. It was a very close fight. And I was like, I'm never doing that again, because I got hit so hard. And I love Tyson. I love that he said that. Everyone has a plan until you get knocked. Yeah, until you punch so hard, you're like, I'm done. Like, I don't know what I'm doing now. I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to do this again. But 3 days later, I was like, okay, when am I going to do it again? And that was my entire relationship. The whole time I fought was the excitement of preparing for a fight, the dread of the night of the fight, of it actually happening, and then the elation after it was over and wanting to do it again. I never actually really enjoyed getting hit. I mean, who does? But like the fight part wasn't my favorite part. I was more of the process of getting ready for it, the excitement of getting ready for it. And then of course, like putting on the show, and then the after, like, oh, and then it's done, you know? So it was just a ride. It was just a
That's
ride.
great. That's
Yeah.
great.
I can definitely appreciate how, when we store all these things in our bodies, like I do find some of the somatic stuff very therapeutic, but to me, there's nothing like punching to get shit out of your body.
Right. Right.
Punching and kicking is my favorite workout by a long shot. In
I
fairness,
know.
I'm
I
not at
love
the
it.
point where I'm fighting anyone, but I so enjoy just even in a group setting with a punching bag. So it just gets it out of your system, and
Yeah,
that feels so good.
I agree with that. And I'd say like I encounter occasionally um, when I'm doing work, I work both I work with the body and with the emotions and mind. And so we work all of it together. So we interweave it. And I find that sometimes I work with people who are like, I'm not comfortable hitting. And then we kind of get into it and talk about it. But like there have been, oh, I mean, I can't even say decades. It's just like centuries of women's anger being repressed, suppressed, and like this is not an okay emotion for women to have. That I maybe once or twice in the last 20 years of working with people have I found that someone I work with tried it and then they're like, I can't do it. I'm uncomfortable. And then I'm like, okay, that's great. You don't have, you know what I mean? I'm like, it's not for everyone. But what I find most often is when the permission is given in a safe space to release the frustration, the anger, the rage, you know? And this is like rage that goes back so flippin' far. And what I believe in my practice is that not only are you holding your own personal trauma. I believe in epigenetics. I believe in you know the lineage, that we're not only just holding our own personal traumas, but we're holding the traumas of our lineage. We're holding the traumas of the type of body that we are housed in. And you know, if that's a minority body, that's a marginalized body, there's a lot of rage to get out.
I agree with you so wholeheartedly. I believe if you follow history, this goes back to Eve. It
Mm.
goes that far back,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it has been built up all these centuries and
Hmm.
with no release.
Right.
That's cruel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm happy that you are doing what you do and allowing that to be part of the person's identity, and not something odd or strange or unbecoming of a woman.
Yeah. I love that you said that, Eve, too, because I'm personally enjoying an apple flavored Izzy right now.
There we go. Bite
It's
that apple.
apple flavored. So I'm like, oh,
Bite
I'm
that
just
apple.
I'm just over here even it up.
Yeah, hey, find a man to share that with and take him down with you.
With a good kick.
Yeah.
Well, I hope our listeners hear this, and if they've ever thought that something like that was unbecoming, because I certainly have faced that with ex-partners when I tell them that I kickbox, or somebody that I've just started dating, they're like, "Oh." And I'm like, "Does that intimidate you?" And it's surprising that for some people it still does. I'm like, "I'm not trying to come for you." You know what I mean? I'm not I'm not building up these skills for the next time we have an argument, but it is a special kind of release I find from that type of workout that I've never found anywhere else.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I'm on the same page with you on that.
When girls come to you, do they come to you with that kind of enthusiasm of wanting to just get in there and just kick stuff around, or they come to you more traditional attitude?
Girls do primarily. I would say like I run into more trepidation or like self-consciousness in older women that I work with or that come to me that I do one-on-one coaching with. But when I'm doing like Girl Scout groups or camps and I've done, some one-on-one coaching with teen girls too, they're excited. They're like, we get to and you think about that, even like that we perpetuate that, like the permission, like we're gonna get to hit stuff. That's amazing,
Yeah.
because we do that. We do that where we partition children in particular gender roles based on, well, like that's what the boys do. They go around and they hit each other and they do, like, well, why can't the girls do that? Like, so you get to see that it's not their decision to sit down and be nice and play dolls, like that. Given the opportunity to hit some mitts and learn how to kick, they're into it, and they get really into it and they love it, and they're just like, and they're like yelling, and it's so fun to watch. It's really encouraging, when I work with the younger women. I'm encouraged to see the resiliency and the enthusiasm to be themselves and be authentic and just try new things, that light is still there,
I really love this quote from you. My grandest dream is to empower young girls to follow their dreams, believe in themselves, and live their lives proudly and joyfully in the body that they were gifted.
Mm.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I do. I spent a number of years in the fitness world, fitness and nutrition. It was a natural progression after I retired from boxing. I moved home. I started working at a studio. I opened a studio, and I worked in that framework for enough time to be done. And even people coming to me, I work movement based on healing. I don't work movement based on external change. So I was just like, I don't want you to kickbox because you want arms like mine. I don't want you to work out with me because you don't like your butt and you're trying to change your butt. There's a place for it in the world and it's absolutely okay. But I just reached a point where I was like, that's not what movement is for me. Movement for me is a healing practice. It is a practice of coming home to the body. And you don't come home to the body with movement when you're going into the movement trying to change what is there or what is that, It is going to change. And that's the beauty of it. So naturally, I say, like, hey, if you're not really happy with where your body is right now, that's okay. Your body is going to change. No matter what you think, you don't think about it now, but like you're in 25 years, your body's not going to be the same. Your body 25 years ago, you were looking in the mirror at a completely different body. So, and can you love it through the process of all the different changes and all the different ways that it's going to look? So identified with the body, and that's not who we are. It is where we are housed. Our consciousness is housed in this body. And when I think about things moving from the mental plane to the astral plane to the physical plane, and the body holding, I get a little emotional, but the body holding this trauma for us. And then our response is, I hate you. Like, I don't like the way you look. Like this anger and hatred and loathing for the body when it's held this trauma for us so that we can wait until we're ready to move through it and process it and heal. And until that happens, it's holding for us without any request, to for love, or I mean, it wants it, but it just does it. It just holds. It's unconditional, and we're in there going, you know, it's
The
just
thing
not
is,
fair.
Lisa. The thing is,
It's
Lisa,
not
is
fair.
that
It's not okay.
it's not so much of that. It's more that there's a body ideal that girls grow up seeing and being pushed towards achieving, and that's where the disconnect, I think, comes from. Is that they see an ideal that they feel they must reach, and the truth about their body, as you're saying, is lost in that trying to achieve that ideal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
really,
the anger would be rightly placed in society, right? Or in the but we're all a part of that. We're a part of the perpetuation of of what the ideal is, right? So
but I love what you had to say because there's something really, really that like starts to erode that sense of just being in something for what the results are going to be. So to come home to yourself just as a good in and of itself to spend that time with your body and love it exactly how it is. I think that it starts to fray at the seams of what society makes women force themselves into. So I appreciate the way that you said it because it was really beautiful.
I spent so many years hating myself, and my body was being exploited. And so there was just all of this was informed as I experienced it, right? And so I I breathe so free in my life right now. Like I just wake up and I know what's possible. And so I just want to share that. I want that experience for girls, and I want that experience for them now, like so that they don't go through the many years that I went through. I want, it's a challenge growing up, and it's a challenge growing into a body, and it's a challenge growing into you're growing into a mind, developing a psyche and an ego and your personality, a collection of all these thoughts, and you're going to grow up with stuff that eventually you're going to be like, that doesn't work for me anymore, and you're going to have to peel apart and really come back into yourself again. But ultimately, like if we start with younger generations, and the we don't teach right now, we don't spend the time teaching the mental and emotional intelligence. And when we take time to teach that, that really opens up the possibility for people to be authentically themselves from the very beginning. Imagine that. You don't have to like build this fake self all the way to like tear it apart later in life. There's communities where children are being schooled differently, and they're growing up learning not just about how to how to be a part of society. They're learning how to be a part of this individualized body, with the understanding and knowing that they are consciousness within that they are more than the body, and that they have this great range of potential and abilities that cannot be contained.
Beautiful.
The powers that be don't like that. They want to keep you small. They want to keep you small, because if they keep you small, then you're always looking outside of yourself. So then you're a part of the consumerism. You're a part of the capital. You're a part of the society, which is always devouring, right? And you realize that going in is where it's at, and loving this and being your own best friend, and following your heart, and like letting the universe unfold into this beautiful experience. You're like, whoa, all that is bullshit.
Yes. We love to ask our guests, Lisa, of the three names in our podcast, does one really speak to you or have a story or a response of the virgin, the beauty, or the bitch?
I love virgin. For two reasons, I'm going to say. The first one is I remember encountering dating people after some of my experiences and then them saying, well, you're not a virgin. And because I was raped as a young girl. And I remember that just feeling like that I didn't get to choose that status of losing my virginity, which to me now is just crap. Like you're saying, like, like the first time you consensually share yourself with another person is that's your first time. And I believe that. So I was wanted this idea of this virginess, but now I would say I identify with it because I wake up every morning and I'm like, oh, good, I'm here again. Okay, what are we going to do today? Like, what's going to happen and what's going to unfold? And I have a couple of things on the agenda, but the rest of it's kind of open. So let's go do new things and let's meet new people and have new experiences. So I love this idea of stepping into each day as a virgin. Like, have you done that before? Well, no, not today. I haven't, because people were like, well, I've done that. I've seen that. I've been there. But you can always bring this, like, you haven't done it. You haven't seen it. You haven't been there before, because this moment is unique and new and different. And if you don't bring the past into it, if you really come at it with this new eyes and this beginner's learning experience, then you're like, ooh, this is fun. And then sometimes you're like, well, it's not for me. And then you move on to the next thing, but you aren't bringing all of this extra information. You're just present. And I think that the ability to just be there fresh and new is very virgin-like.
I don't know how to say it. We are split mind cells here, the three of us, because when Heather and I started the show, these three words came to us. They were cool words. However, we've been doing this podcast now for 6-7 years, and these words have taught us so much. They have so much depth and breadth. And what you just said about the virgin is exactly how we feel about it. It's timeless. It is not an event. It is every moment that you're in. You're a virgin in that moment. And it goes on perpetually forever.
I love that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we could not have scripted your little take there any better.
That's so good. I love it.
Kindred spirits.
I love that. I just love that.
Us too.
Yeah, we spent the last spring equinox. We did 4 shows specifically on the Virgin and came to these conclusions that this is how the word can be interpreted by every single person. And it can be timeless. It can be yours forever, right? And not something you lost or something that was taken away from you or something you didn't have a choice over. No, every moment you're virgin. So get on with it. Come on.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. So thank you so much for that. So you're working with young girls. How do people connect with you? Your work sounds so powerful. How do people connect with you?
Well, so this is perfect timing because I actually just launched a Kickstarter. So I have, over the last 8 years, I've created these superpower cards. They're I am cards. Because I am are the 2 most powerful words in the English language. What you put behind them is who you become. And we don't really notice how we communicate with ourselves. More attention to that is always beneficial. And so these are meant to like help you every day. And I share them with people. Like I carry them around my coffee shop is always like, oh my gosh, can we pull a card today? Like I carry these cards around. But the new edition, the new decks, there's 3 decks. There's a strong deck, a confident deck, and a powerful deck. And there's a book, a journal guidebook that goes with I'm just kickstarting it. They're in this beautiful magnetic box. The cards are circles now because to me that's just yes. And I'm going to pull a card. These are the last version of the cards. My favorite thing about these is their shadow each one is a shadow superhero. And there's different, she's got a hijab on. There are different diversity, ethnicity represented in the shadows, in their hairstyles. We even have a challenged, I don't know how that's the correct term now. She's in a wheelchair. And I love that, because I just want anyone that we have an androgynous, like a non-binary card. I just love that, to think about pulling a card and being able to say, oh, that, like, that person kind of looks like me, right? That, just that idea. Okay, so I just pulled one. So I'm becoming. Every day I'm becoming more myself. I listen to my instincts and allow my becoming in each moment, which is so perfect with the idea of the Virgin in the moment.
Absolutely.
So I just launched the Kickstarter, and if you go on my Instagram, Lisa Vanahn, or you go to lisavanahn.com, or you go to the I Am Initiative, those are my websites. That is going on for the next 36 days.
Fabulous. We'll link to all of those.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I appreciate that so much.
Definitely.
Yeah.
If Heather and I wanted to buy some of those, where do we go?
Yeah,
The
so
same place, right?
Yeah, you would go to the Kickstarter. And I can send you the link to the Kickstarter. I just launched it last night, so
Congratulations.
I'm just excited about it. Yeah, so I'll send you the link to it for sure.
So how does that feel versus being punched in the face?
So good, right?
So good.
So good. I kickbox still. Like, I love punching and kicking, but I'm done and retired with the fighting, and that feels good. Like, I feel done being punched in the face, but I like hitting stuff hard. I mean, that's
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
great. Where do you kick, Heather?
Oh, I just have a little studio that's close to my place, so
That's
it's just
amazing.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. That's so good.
Lisa, you are a ball of fire. You are a comet blasting through space. We love your energy.
Love that. Thank you. Comet blasting through space.
Cosmic.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for all this information. It is so valuable and helpful. We really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us.
Thanks for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
So lovely to meet you. Thank you for all of your insights today.
Good to meet you too.
And you have been listening to
The Virgin,
The Beauty,
and the Bitch.
Find us, like us, share us, bring all your friends, and bring them right back. Talk soon.